guys, welcome to episode 20 of Sketch Support. I've got another free 2-page sketch that you can download at Scrapbook Generation, and in this video I'm going to share 4 layouts that I created, all based on that one sketch. There's also a 3-page PDF of 22 more sketch examples that show how you can adapt and customize this sketch to better fit your needs. I'll link to both the free sketch and the PDF in the description down below. And if you enjoy these sketches, I would greatly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button as well. I've also got a new sketch bundle that we just added to scrapbookgeneration.com. It's got 10 2-page sketches that all feature 9 photos. So if you typically have a lot of photos from one event, I think you will really like this one. And next week, starting on Thursday, May 5th, we have our sales for National Scrapbook Day, and all of my downloads, so sketches, ebooks, and classes will all be 20% off. So if you want to stock up on some sketches, or maybe grab those bigger items like my Writing to Remember book, I would definitely check that sale out. So let's go ahead and get this video started with a quick look at the sketch for this month. This sketch was a combination of some of the requests I got through the comments last month, and also me wanting to work in a heavy themed element. And before you judge this sketch too harshly, I highly advise that you give it a chance. I know that paper-wise it looks plain with just that single background, and then those flowers are a lot. And then what do you do if you don't have an 8x10" photo? I get looking at this and immediately thinking I'll never use this. But that's the fun of this series, and really what it's all about. It's showing that you can take any sketch, even one that you might think you would never use, and making it work for you and your needs. I really think if you are struggling with this sketch, that once you see my layouts and how I adapted things to work for me, you'll see what I'm talking about. I always enjoy working with heavy themes, but if that's not your thing, this sketch can still work for you. You can remove these flowers and extend this photo block up, or you can use strips or squares or a grid design of shapes here. This doesn't have to be super theme crazy. It can also easily be adapted to fit any and every theme, and you can decide how much or how little you want to inject that theme into the design. If you want to play around with a specific theme and customize the sketch to fit that theme, trust me, you will be amazed at how many cool things you can do with this area. Just think about themes like Christmas. You could use Christmas trees or presents or strings of lights in this area. You could use birthday candles, hats, or noisemakers for a birthday layout. You could use buildings or road signs for a travel layout. Maybe snowmen or hills with sleds and falling snowflakes for winter. Fireworks, sports balls, bats or equipment, ghosts, pumpkins, leaves, rulers. I can go on and on. There are so many themed possibilities with this sketch. Now with the 8x10" photo, if you don't have one, you can always break this up into smaller photos. Using 4 4x5" photos would be a perfect fit for this space, and you get to include more photos that way. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first layout based on this sketch. With my first layout, it is one of those interesting things where it doesn't look like the sketch, but it does look like the sketch. And the way both of those statements are true is because I followed the general design concept of the sketch, but I adapted and customized it to fit the boyish theme and the supplies I wanted to use. if you break a sketch down into the bare bones of it, you can individualize those pieces to fit your needs. And then to make the layout construction easy, you put it all together following that same general design concept of that sketch. And this is where sketches can be a great tool for getting layouts done quickly while still having fun and being creative and feeling like you are creating something unique to you and your style and your photos and the supplies you have on hand. So to me, this particular sketch, if I go down to the bare bones of it, I see 4 sections that you can adapt to fit your needs. The first is the 8 by 10 inch photo. The second is this photo block. The third is the background piece, and the fourth are the flowers. With this layout, I kept the 8 by 10 inch photo and then altered 3 of the sections to fit my needs. With the photos I used for this photo block, I had fewer than the sketch and they are sized a little different. I have 3 by 4 inch photos and 1 3 by 2 inch photo. With this set, I liked the idea of each photo being the same size, repeating that same look because they are all very similar photos. The only reason I cropped one down to 3 by 2 inch was to still utilize the journaling space as it is on the sketch. The biggest difference is that on the left page, my photo does not overlap onto the 8 by 10 inch photo. The sketch has a 4 by 4 inch photo there, so it overlaps 1 inch onto that photo. And this wasn't a big deal, and I didn't have to change or adapt anything for that to work. On the right page, the total width of the photos on the sketch is 10 inches. And with the photos I used, I ended up 1 inch less than that. And again, this wasn't a big deal, but I did make a slight change to accommodate that. So I tend to be a stickler for margins. And I think that's just me growing up with my mom as our high school yearbook advisor. And my first experiences with learning how to design was with yearbook design. So margins are just one of those design things that has always stuck with me. So since I lost 1 inch on the right, there is a wider margin from the edge of my photo mat to the edge of the background. I decided to shift my photos up so that I have that same margin from the bottom edge of the photo mat and the bottom edge of the background. So this space here is the same as this space here. And a good thing about having more space down here is this gave me an opportunity to have more stars showing along the bottom of the background. For my background, this is where I made the biggest change. I pretty much took that background and the flowers and smashed them together in one big design. To create this look, I used a pencil and ruler to draw the outline of the background piece in the same measurements as it is on the sketch. I also already had my photos added, so I knew exactly where to place my stars and fill in all of that open background. When putting together designs like this, where you are creating a large cluster or grouping of shapes, I follow the same method every time. Even if the overall design is different, the method works. So I always start by adding my largest pieces first and kind of spread them out somewhat randomly, yet somewhat evenly all over the space I want to fill. Then I will fill in more space with some medium-sized pieces. Usually with the medium pieces, I'm using more than I had with the larger pieces. Then after that, I go in with smaller pieces to fill in even more, and then finish with some tiny pieces in the small spaces that I haven't filled yet. I don't worry about the stars being perfectly spaced, and some are slightly overlapped. I also added a few small ones with foam adhesive, and to add even more texture and dimension, I added some hand stitching on a few of them. There are so many different shapes you could use to create a design like this, whether you're going for super themed or not. And it doesn't have to be as detailed as mine is. You could use shapes like hearts, circles, squares, hexagons, and triangles. Or if you did want to go super themed, you could use shapes like leaves, paw prints, Easter eggs, or pumpkins. And if you want to simplify it, you could use shapes of all the same size and arrange them in straight lines in a grid type of pattern. I knew that one option I wanted to play with was a wave design. I had this great photo of Jackson looking out at the water that I've really been wanting to use, and I really liked the idea of using this sketch with waves covering that whole background area and then using fish in place of the flowers. Originally, I had planned on layering long horizontal wave strips, but then I saw that I had this fun Paige Evans cut file and thought it would be an interesting design for this sketch. One of the toughest things about creating two-page layouts is creating designs that go over both pages that are supposed to line up together. That background piece on the sketch is 14 inches, so you have to use two separate pieces to cover that space on both pages. With a simple block background, like you see on the sketch, or even strips or squares, it's not that big of a deal to get them lined up correctly. But with this die cut, that was a challenge I had not anticipated. It was a lot harder than I was expecting. First, I had to stretch that cut file to 14 inches because that is the width of the background piece on the sketch. My cutting mat is only 12 inches, so to cut it on my silhouette, I had to cut it into two separate pieces, one for the left page and one for the right page. Of that 14-inch background, 3 inches of it are on the left page and 11 inches are on the right page. And I'm going to show you how I cut mine. I'm not super knowledgeable on silhouette stuff, so I'm not sure if there's a better way to do this, but this felt really easy and worked perfectly for me. First, I expanded the size of the wave to 14 inches using the ruler and guides at the top. Then I placed the waves so that only 11 inches of it are on the cutting area and then sent that to cut. When that was done, I clicked on the eraser tool, changed it to a square, and made it bigger. Then I erased the 11-inch section that's on that cutting area. To make sure I am erasing right on the line at the left edge of the cutting area so that my two pieces will line up perfectly, I zoom in and I can really see that edge really good, and then I line up the edge of the eraser with the edge of the cutting mat. Now I have my 3-inch piece and I can send that to cut. And like I said, this part was really easy. Now, the complicated part was making sure that as I added the pattern paper backing, that the lines on the inner edges of both the 11-inch piece and the 3-inch piece lined up together. It doesn't sound all that complicated, but it definitely was. Because the lines on the inner edge don't have an anchor point like the left and right edges do, you really have to pay attention to how they adhere to the pattern paper backing and that it still lines up with the connecting line on the opposite page. It was definitely more challenging and took more time than I was expecting. Once I had the waves adhered on my layout, I added some hand stitching along the white die cut lines. And a little tip I would give you if you are not super confident with your paper piercing abilities, I would use a pencil and lightly sketch a line that will be your guide for piercing. It really doesn't add a whole lot of extra time to do, and it ensures that you are piercing right in the middle of that white line. To complete my little water scene, I cut several fish out of a pattern paper and used foam adhesive to adhere them all throughout the waves. I also used my favorite Nuvo Jewel drops in Sea Breeze to add a few droplets at the top and then lots of little bubbles coming up from the fish. With the photo block, I had one more photo than the sketch, so I changed it up a bit to fit. I ended up using one 6x4" photo and 5 3x2" photos. My original plan was to cut the 6x4" photo into a 4x4" photo like you see on the sketch, but my plan changed to better fit with the large wave die cut. The wave die cut doesn't have the same height as the background piece on the sketch. So I wanted my photos to go all the way to the right edge of this background piece so that you couldn't see that the waves didn't go all the way down. So there's no weird gaps down here. Plus, this shift down with the photos allowed more of this cool wave design to show up here. So keeping that extra 2 inches on the photo allowed me to shift those photos over to that edge. Usually I wouldn't split a photo between 2 pages, but as long as it's not split right over a person or important detail, I'll do it occasionally. Here it's just the water, so I felt like it was completely fine. This layout shows a good option if you don't have or want to use an 8x10" photo. I always feel like when I'm using a large photo like an 8x10, it should be a standout photo, like a great portrait or maybe some beautiful scenery, and I just did not have that with this set of photos. These photos are darker, a little blurry in some spots and grainy and really just not the greatest quality. So blowing one up in size just wasn't going to look that great. And unfortunately, that's a common theme with a lot of my older photos and not having a better camera then. A lot of my indoor photos from when my kids were little are not really that great. But I love this photo set, even if the pictures aren't that great. So I was excited to use them with this sketch because of that themed element going across the top. The good thing about this sketch is that there is a lot you can do without having the large 8x10" photo. You can either use a combination of smaller photos in that space, like 4x5" photos, or you could use 4x6" photos and have them extended to the top and bottom of the layout. Or you can remove that large photo and extend the photo block, the background, and that theme design, which is exactly what I did. I extended the background across both pages, and I used a wooden paper to match the bowling lanes. When I go theme, I tend to go like super theme, and I like to try to mimic a lot of detail from that theme. This paper with the smaller wooden slats was perfect for the small wooden detail in a bowling lane. Then I used 4 5x4" photos for my photo block, so it evenly extends across both the left and right page. You could also simplify and use 4 6x4" photos across the whole layout. I liked having the wooden border around the photos, so I decided to crop mine so that I would have a 1" margin around the edges and the bottom. In place of the flowers, I used bowling pins across the top of the photos. To add a little more interest and detail to them, I used several different white pattern papers. I also added a hand stitch border around each one. I absolutely love hand stitching, both the process of it and the look of it. So I typically am looking for ways to add it where I can, and this felt like a good place to add that detail and texture, especially since there's really not a lot of detail along this area. On the left page, where the 8 by 10 inch photo is on the sketch, I added a small photo and a bowling ball that is crashing into 3 pins. And I thought that would be a fun way to fill in that space where the large photo was on the sketch and to really bring a fun design to this bowling theme. I also added some punch stars around the pins in that area. The last layout is always about showing how you can make a sketch work for a different size of layout. So I used the 2-page sketch to create a 1-page layout. When it comes to using 2-page sketches for a 1-page layout, there are a few options on how to do that. You can use one side as it is. You can use a combination of elements from both sides, or you can shrink the whole design down. I mostly focused on the right page and used it as my starting point. I basically used the same concept, photos on the bottom and embellishments along the top. But I made it a little smaller. So instead of having this whole design across almost the whole layout, I can instead center it and have somewhat equal margins around it. I used 4 2 by 3 inch photos arranged in a line going across the layout, similar to the photo block on the sketch. Instead of arranging them in one photo mat together, I matted them individually and then tilted and overlapped them for a more whimsical and kind of playful look. Then in place of the flowers and the background piece, I used a Paige Evans cut file that spells out awesome, and I backed each letter and the star with a different pattern paper. To add some texture and dimension, I also added a hand stitch border around each letter. There are tons of cut files and large die cut designs you could use for something like this. And this was a fairly quick design to put together, minus the stitching. To continue the star theme, I added little star clusters in 3 different areas, along with a camera die cut and some word and phrase stickers. This ended up being a really simple yet still detailed way to interpret the sketch and adapt it to a 1-page layout. That's all for this episode of Sketch Support. Next month, I'll be back with another new sketch. This time it'll be a 1-page sketch since I alternate each month. Don't forget about our National Scrapbook Day sale at Scrapbook Generation and the 20% off all sketches, ebooks, and classes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.